In the last video, we ended up with this UI, simple UI, that we can use to drop pieces into the board. But the only way that we can see that piece in the board is by looking at the JavaScript console. So in this video, we are going to move from that and we are actually going to draw the board on screen. So back in our component, we are going to add a new div. Now let's start by adding a div for every row on the board. We can do this by saying div, and inside this div we can do before row, comma, and let's say row index in board, and we need to give this a key, so key equals row index. So in this case we are going to have a row which is going to be an array of columns, and the row index which is going to be the index of that row in the board. If we save that and go back to the browser, we can examine the elements on the page by right-clicking and selecting Inspect. And inside the body we have the div of the app, the component, and inside the board div we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divs. So that's working. Now to draw the board we are going to use SVGs. So we can just say SVG and we can give it a size. In this case I'm going to make it every column is going to be a 50 by 50 square with a circle inside it. So width 50, height or height 50 as well. And inside the SVG tag we draw a circle with circle. Now the first two parameters of the circle is going to be the X and Y position of the circle within the SVG square. So let's say CX, and let's put it right in the middle, 25. Same for Y, 25. And then we have to give it a radius, which is going to extend from the center and out to the side. I'm going to give it a radius of 20 so that there is a small gap between the circle and the square outside of it. So R equals 20. And I think I can just self-close the tag like this. Okay. Now let's save this and see how it looks. And we can see 6 circles, 1 for each row. So I think we can just duplicate or iterate over the columns of each row to draw each circle in the column. So in the SVG here we can use another v-for, and this time we can say col, or let's say column index in row, which is the row that we are iterating at that moment, from this v-for out here. And again we have to give this another key, column index. Save that and let's see how it looks. Okay, it's starting to look like a board. We have 6 rows and 7 columns, all filled with small circles. Now let's give it a background color. I'm going to write a CSS class down here in the style section, and I'm going to give a background to each row div. So row, and I think I gave it a class, didn't I? And I don't think I did. So the div that contains the SVG will have a class row. Now in the style section we can say row and give it a background color, and let's use 0f55ff. Let's save that and see how it looks. Looks like the row that contains the SVGs is just taking up the entire space of the screen horizontally. So I think we can fix this by just wrapping the rows inside another div and making that div a flex container. So back in the template, I'm going to create a div up here Let's give it a class of wrapper, and I'm going to move the row div inside of it. Okay, that should do it. Now in the style section down here, just below row, let's say wrapper display flex, and let's go ahead and center the content as well with justify content center. Okay, let's see if that works. Looks like I made a mistake somewhere. Hold on. I see where the problem is. I should not have wrapped the rows. I should have just wrapped the board itself. So I'm going to take this, move it up here, and then take this closing tag, move it below it, and just clean up a little bit. And let's save and see how it works. Okay, that's much better. Although somehow I think the circles themselves are not very well distributed. I see a lot less space on this top section here than the one down here. So I think we can fix that by just making the rows themselves flex containers. Let's go down to the style again, and let's add a display flex to the row class. Save it, and okay, that's a lot better. Now instead of just showing a black circle, let's change the color of the circle based on the content of that row and column. If it is a 0, meaning that it's empty, it's going to be white. If it has a 1, it's going to be red. And if it has a 2, it's going to be yellow. So let's write the CSS classes first. Let's start with the empty circle. Let's create a new class, call it circle.empty with a background color of white. Just to make sure that it works, I'm going to go up to the row, actually to the circle tag, and give it a class circle and also empty. If I save that and go back to the browser, nothing happens. Okay, made a mistake. Let's see what happened. Class circle empty. So, missed an R here. Save that. And still nothing happens. Okay, let's see. Oh, I know what happens. We are coloring an SVG circle, so it's not background color, it's actually fill. Okay, hopefully this time it works. And there you go. We have a board filled with white circles. Okay, now let's do the red ones. I'm gonna copy this, paste it down below, change the class to circle red, and the color will be D50000. Okay, let's try that. Let's change the class of the circle to red. Okay, that works. Now let's do the yellow ones. Copy this again. Circle yellow. And the color is DA D400. Save that. And I forgot to change the class just to test it. Circle yellow. Okay, now it will be nice if VueJS can just figure out what class to assign to the circle based on the content of the board. So let's do that. We already know the value of the column because we are getting it inside the column variable here. So we just have to make a decision of which class to use based on that value. And in fact, I'm just going to not use the circle class, and I'm going to refer to it down in the style with just circle, like so. Let's see if that still works, and it does. And inside our component data, we already have variables to determine red and yellow. Let's add a new one just for the empty. So empty is 0. Now let's go to the circle tag, and in the class property we just had to add a colon, and now we can make decisions inside this class definition. For example, we can just open and close curly brackets and say empty, which will be the class name that is going to be assigned, but only if the condition next to it evaluates to true. For example, if column equals 0, which means it's an empty space. Also, we can assign the class red, but only if column equals 1. And finally, we assign yellow when column equals 2. Save that. And if we go back to the browser, they went back to black. But I think that's because we just changed one of the styles to circle like this, so we just have to change the others. The red and the white. Save that. Okay, now they are white because all of the spaces in the board have zeros. But if we use the UI that we have up here, and let's say drop a piece in the center column, now that circle changes to red. And if we drop another one in the same column, the one above it changes to yellow. And we can continue dropping pieces in the board, alternating between player 1 and player 2. Now this is fine and all, but I think it'll be much better and a lot more user-friendly if I can just select a column by clicking on it. So in the next video we are going to add the functionality of clicking on a column to select it. And also we are going to find the winning state so that when a player has a 4 in a row, for example, if I drop a piece in this column here, and then the player 2 drops it just in the 1, and then player 1 drops it in the 4th column. As you can see, player 1 already wins the game, but we can just continue dropping pieces in the board. So we are going to add the code to find the winning state.